What is good, my people, my peeps? So I know you noticed that there is a different picture on the screen, and I'm going to get into uh, the discussion about this picture. It's a woman from the Middle East who is wearing a hijab. So I want to get into that a little bit later down the line of this live stream. There's just been some things on my mind regarding the Middle East, and it came somewhat to full fruition, for lack of better terminology, um, tonight. So I've been sitting here. I said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it since I can't sleep. I don't know what's going on, but lately it's been late nights. Um, so the title of this live stream is Prophecy, Men in the Middle East, Homosexuality, and the Hijab. So I'm just going to jump right in because I don't want to have this linger and be a long, drawn out live stream. When I have thoughts, I like to get them off my mind and express them. So a while back, many years back, I was going to, I had applied to work overseas in the Middle East. This was when the war was going on, and it was Kuwait, and um, it was it was a almost over, but there was still some conflict in the Middle East, and I had went down to, it was almost like a job fair, and I had went down to apply for some positions that they had available to work overseas. And it was for, if you've heard of, oh my goodness, I can't remember the big, large company names, Halliburton, and these major companies with, they had contracts on military bases to work overseas. And so that's what I had went and applied for. And then I met one of a high school friend, associate, but he knew my brother and my brother's best friend at the time. It was his younger brother. And so we were both at this job fair. So filled out the applications, we made it through, but I decided to try to work here, stay here in the United States because, mind you, I was still married at the time, and these positions, they would have lasted 6 months to a year or longer. And so this mutual friend of ours, he took the job. He went overseas. He would come back and forth. And I mean, these jobs were lucrative, right? But nevertheless, and he would come back and forth, and he had told us, his adventures overseas, and working in Kuwait and Dubai. And this was before Dubai was a thing. Nowadays everybody's like, "Oh, I'm going to Dubai," but this is before Dubai was mentioned. And so he told us about his adventures in Dubai and all of his travels. And so one time he was telling us a story regarding the men in the Middle East, and he was saying that um, a lot of Americans would be shocked to know that a lot of the Middle Eastern men um, are homosexuals or have homosexual tendencies or practice or participate in homosexual acts. And when he was saying that, we were just sitting around talking. I was shocked, along with everybody else who was hearing, his stories about some of the men in the Middle East. I'm not saying all, but the ones he came across, and how he was stunned because they're so strict with their religious ways, and for me, the way that they treat their women is more of an oppressive manner, right? So these men in the Middle East, he was saying they prefer men, and how they constantly approached him. And so I was, to say the least, blown away, and how they may have all of these wives, but the wives are basically like maids, and they're to have the children for their, legacy. And this was so many years ago. He had, told us about this, and it never left my mind. I was like, knew something was not quite right. That's how I was feeling. And so tonight, as I was strolling along, and listening to some videos, and then I went on the young lady, and I cannot find her name, but I went on her channel, the one that had who prophesied about TD Jakes, and she had another new prophecy out, and it was like a two-part prophecy, and basically Babylon, and we know this is everywhere, but she was referring to the men of the Middle East in half of the ending of this prophecy, and I want you guys to hear this, what she was saying. And then I'm also going to talk about the hijab, this head wrap that this Middle Eastern woman is wearing. And I remember seeing these women wear this wrap, and being persecuted in their own country, from their husbands and families, if they came outside without this particular head wrap on. And I think it came to the forefront for most of America in the world when we had the conflict, when they falsified the conflict with Kuwait and Iraq and all of that. And then more of their culture came to the forefront of Americans' TVs and, information channels, okay? And how some of these women were treated if they came outside without these particular garments on. But before I speak about, I just always felt that there was something wrong about this hijab, because if you don't know what it is, I implore you to go Google it. It's not just that her head and her face is covered. I mean, her whole body is covered, from head to toe with this hijab. So before I get into my opinion and my thoughts about it was almost like an aha moment for me. I'm going to let you listen to this prophecy. Hold on, let me cue this up. And I believe, I don't know her name in particular, but the channel is The Master's Voice. So if you ever want to look her up. Okay, so here's this prophecy, and I'm shortening the prophecy so we can get to where she's talking about the men of the Middle East. So here we go. Arab nations is like. I've been saying it. Most of them, you will find those references on maybe one or two of those prophecies in the series that is called The Sodomy Ritual, where God was revealing just how powerful and just how embedded homosexuality is. Where God was warning that the amount of homosexuality in the earth is so great, but the majority of it is closeted, it is hidden. So these men are just perhaps 0.01% away from hopping into the gay life. Or should I say 0.99% away. Just one more piece of percent will send them full scale on the other side. But in the Arab nations, there's this mindset and belief that in Islam, their sexuality is so sacrosanct and there's so many rules that govern sexuality. And because this is a culture that highly prizes and promotes marriage, having the right woman, having a home, giving birth to children,
And also because of how strict their laws over there in that side of the world. People are given the impression that they don't even want you dressing a little bit provocatively when you travel there. You have to be careful, apparently, where you go. And here was God rudely ripping the veil and showing that the situation is something completely different. Tell them that Arabs are greatly gay and in the closet. They are lovers of men and seekers of male flesh. They love men, and they also love boy flesh. There is an entire sector of men in the Arab countries who are not allowed or expected to marry. In a culture that prizes marriage as the completion of a young man's total journey into manhood, I want you to tell them that there is an entire caste system, and the young males in this caste are not allowed or expected to marry. And why is this? Because these young men are growing up to be the wives of the Arab men. So despite how it looks, there's rampant homosexuality in the Middle East. These boys are groomed from very young to sleep with men. They are literally trained the same way you would train a young girl in a harem. The same way Queen Esther was prepared and taught everything about the king because she had to get her shot. It was a competition. Many women in the king's chamber of women, and only one could be queen. And so all the young women were being taught how to dress, the right affectation, which smells and scents are the best, how to laugh in a way that men like, how to cast your eyes down to the floor and look virginal. They were all receiving instructions. Well, God said that there's a whole school, there's a whole cast of guys, young men, young males. I mean, starting from very young. Please understand, the word for the very young is child, children. God says that they're not expected to marry in these Arab countries at all. They are groomed from young how to sleep with men, how to approach men, how to only want men, and how to welcome male advances and male attention. They are not expected to marry women. They are expected to remain as boys on call. The Arab society is a gay one. They are hiding the huge desire for male on male sex by mingling it and covering it up with marriage and the desire for women. And that's what's exactly happening here in US society. That is definitely it. So many of these men, I can now say with a greater grasp on my sanity than I had last year when I first discovered these things. So many of these men in the church are gay. You're standing there in Atlanta and the man is preaching to you with hair slide.
Okay. So I didn't want her to go into any more parts because we're focusing on the Middle East and the Muslim men and the Arab men and how they have this whole facade, and not all, just some, just like here in the United States. There is a facade of masculinity in the hip hop culture, but behind closed doors, the walls are basically falling down around them because their secrets are being revealed. And such is what is coming from this prophecy that the Master's Voice, her channel is called, is saying that the Arab nation, their men will be revealed for, their homosexual ways. And I tell you this, I heard of this so long ago from a mutual friend of our family who, like I explained, we were going to work in the Middle East and he took the position and I did not. And he would come back with these tales. I mean, because he would take his leave sometimes and stay in the Middle East. And like I said, travel to Dubai and all of these other regions in the Middle East, beautiful places. He would go and take pictures and show of his stay. But the stories that he came back of, uh, of these men being highly homosexual um, were mind blowing. And so, I just tucked that in the back of my head, my memories, and kept on going. But when I heard this tonight from this channel, The Master's Voice, and her prophecy that this is going to come just spewing open and out to the world as well, um, it it sounds about right. It really does from my first hand hearing of this, from somebody who was an eyewitness to some activities of homosexuality from Middle Eastern men, and from how they're grooming the boys. And you have to wonder why a nation would only prefer male children. Not that to take over their you know their legacy. But these nations seem to, like she was saying, be grooming them just to be a harem of boy slaves, sex slaves. And it gives you it appears to be like a Roman thing. And that's probably why this is Babylon, and Rome has spread its tentacles outward. It never really fell. It just took over more land and more regions, because Rome had baths, and in these bathhouses, they were maintained by boy slaves and sex slaves. And so in her prophecy, uh, that's what it sounds like they're doing now. That's just undercover. And the degradation of women, um, and you might say degradation of women. What are you talking about? Because they don't prefer women. I don't know if you have heard of horror stories of women from the United States, um, young, young, beautiful women, models. If you can put those type of women in your mind frame, that would go over to Dubai, and they would be treated like just horrible, and they would do sex acts that were just despicable, to get money to make that so-called bag, if you will. And some of them go on these excursions to Dubai and the Middle East, and not knowing that they were going to come upon this horror. And for a country, even if they are so-called so strictly religious with their beliefs, how they would treat women in such a despicable and defiling way shows their disdain for women. So with that being said, I always wondered why not only the women would wear this in their culture, this particular head wrap with just their eyes showing. That seemed not to sit well with me. And that was just me, my personal thoughts. Wow, and it being so, the region being so hot over there for the majority of the time, and for a lot of you all that may not know, that the desert gets very cold at night. And so I just wondered, why would they be so covered? And not only them, I also wondered about the males, because if you ever seen their head wraps, their garments, it seems quite a bit in it to be black. But the women, head to toe covered like this. And now in some places, it's the women, you could be jailed, for not being properly covered. Well, I did some quick research on this, because after hearing this, the Master's Voice prophecy, it just brought back those thoughts of what my friend, my family friend, told us many years ago. And when I did some research on the hijab, what I found out, I can't even say that it shocked me, but I knew that there was something that was not quite right. And so this particular headdress was worn not for religious beliefs, or for their custom. When this first was brought out, when it first, let me say, made headlines, waves, right? This particular head address and the outfit was designed for the weather and harsh weather conditions. Okay, yes, you heard me. This particular headdress was designed, and the garment, excuse me, that accompanied this head design was made for the harsh weather conditions over in that region. Okay, and so let me see if I got. Uh, you all can do the research. I'm going to tell you the information. You go out and you do the research. But I think it was in 1970 or 60, the 70s or the 60s. Um, they switched it over and made it more mandatory for these women to wear this hijab. Um, and so that is why I believe we started seeing um, so many women being tried, tried, being persecuted, who did not want to comply and wear this hijab. But now it is a custom that if you do not do a full research on it, or even a quick research like I did tonight to find out where this originated from, this headdress from head to toe for women, um, it was just for weather, like wearing a raincoat when it's storming outside. It was a protective gear, uh, not a cultural or something that they needed to wear because of their Muslim beliefs or anything of that nature. That's what it became. Okay. And so, um, and I heard some other people say, oh, the Muslim men they're protecting their women because the women were sold. Or that custom never died of women being sold, or because women have no voice in the Middle East. So that custom, or that particular reasoning for women having to wear the hijab is not feasible, because that's still there. Women are oppressed. Women are have no say so, in a lot of the times who they marry, um, and all of that. So do some research on this. I found it quite interesting, and I find it that the women are there just to produce the children, and like the master's voice, her prophecy, as a facade, of a wholesomeness, and um, this family, and us serving, with them serving Allah, or whomever they serve. But it's the walls, the veil, all of it is coming down. It is crumbling. And so I just wanted to share this information with you. And I hope you do some research, and the truth is coming out. And the truth, what? Most definitely will set you free. And much, much love.